Do you remember what was happening in Unplugged last time?
He bought a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Jet bought a lot of stuff, and they had next day delivery. Apparently, does Fuego remind you of anything? Amazon, right? So, Jet bought a whole bunch of stuff and had it delivered. He bought a jet ski, a Dance Dance Revolution game, an ATV. And Grace is quite upset. This is from Grace's point of view, right? Grace is quite upset because they're supposed to be unplugged at the Oasis. Actually, he confesses, some of us might be a little bit plugged. He reaches into the pocket of his shorts and gives us a glimpse of a sleek, glassy object. A phone, I howl. There are no phones here. Well, there's at least one, Tyrell points out. Suddenly, Jet looks away from us and focuses on his sandwich, chomping and chewing. At the same time, he grabs a handful of meat from the platter and crams it into the side of his mouth. I'm trying to figure out what to do when there are footsteps on the path behind me and a man's voice says, "Where did all this stuff come from?" We step away to let Matt in through the front door. His attention snaps from the merchandise outside to the sight of his charge stuffing his face with contraband barbecue. Do you know what contraband means? Not allowed. Illegal. I have no respect for Jet, but even I have to be impressed at how quickly he manages to swallow down that enormous mouthful of food and come up smiling. Oh, hi, Matt. Hope you're hungry. Matt is almost as disgusted as I am. You're like a toddler, incapable of thinking 5 seconds into the future. What do you think your father will say when he finds out about this? Jet shrugs. Vlad's dream is a connected world where anybody can order anything delivered anywhere. Presto, his vision is a reality, and it's delicious. Matt reaches down and plucks the phone out of Jet's pocket, muttering, and how's he supposed to feel about the fact that his son's a thief now instead of just a rotten kid? You can't steal what's already yours, Jet defends himself. You're not supposed to have this, and you know it. You're also not supposed to have barbecued meat, and that goes double for jet skis and giant arcade games. It's all going back, and the food is going in the garbage. Matt seems a little less certain when he's saying that last part. Both he and Tyrell can't stop staring at the meat platter. Even though I'm vegetarian, I kind of understand. Guys can be such carnivores. That's the main reason Dad stays home with Benito every summer instead of coming to the Oasis with Mom and me. Nutrition is the most important of the 3 pillars, I offer, quoting Magnus. No one needs to survive by eating our fellow creatures. The most human thing we can do is surrender our position at the top of the food chain. I have to admit, it sounds better when Magnus explains it. Anyway, I doubt they even hear me. Tyrell is practically drooling, and Matt's resistance seems to be wavering. I get away from there fast. If I stick around to see what happens next, I'll be honor bound to report it to Magnus, and I'm no tattletale. As I round the corner of the cluster of cottages, I see Brooklyn on the far side of the meditation center, looking on with interest. Chapter 6, now we have a chapter from Matt's point of view, Matt Luganis. I graduated 3rd in my class at Stanford. Of the man and woman who finished ahead of me, one already has a Nobel Prize and the other is a MacArthur Genius Grant. When I left college, I had job offers from Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and every tech startup in the world. I turned them all down to work for Vladimir Baranov. He's the biggest rock star in Silicon Valley, and his company Fuego dominates hardware, software, mobile, internet, cryptocurrency, cybersecurity, and at least a dozen fields nobody has even heard of yet. When the next big thing comes along, Fuego will be right there on the cutting edge, and as one of their top young executives, I'll have my finger on the pulse of an interconnected planet. Except I don't. I'm not rolling out new apps and products to take the world by storm. I'm not dreaming up the next innovation people don't yet realize they can't live without. My job, essentially, is babysitting Vladimir Baranov's son. What's that like? 1, picture being jailer to Harry Houdini. 2, multiply it by 500. Jet's 12. Ivory says dismissively. Don't be overdramatic. If you weren't such a heavy sleeper, you would have caught him before he ever got out of the cottage. I'm standing outside the Welcome Center with Magnus Fellini and Ivory Novus, his number 2. We're supervising the loading of the Dance Dance Revolution machine onto the truck that's come to take it away. Ivory helps. She's stronger than both shippers put together. The jet ski and the ATV are already aboard, along with the drum set and the 3D printer that arrived earlier today. So what you're saying, I tell her shamefaced, is that this is my fault? Fault is not a word we use at the Oasis, Magnus interjects in his quiet voice. Blame helps no one in our quest to become whole. No one is at fault unless we are all at fault. Collectively, we find solutions and we move on. Magnus talks a good game, but there's nothing collective about cleaning up the mess Jet made. I'm the one who had to cancel everything he ordered, which wasn't easy because he was several different accounts, so I was never quite sure I'd gotten it all. I'm the one who had to arrange with Fuego to pay the cost of the shipping and restocking and to explain to the boss that his son broke into the Welcome Center, repossessed his phone, and went on a shopping spree. At first, Magnus wouldn't even let me go online to undo the damage because internet use is against Oasis policy. But then people started tripping over all the packages and crates. Eventually, Ivory argued that I'm not technically a guest because I'm only here to be the keeper of Jet, so Magnus gave in. At last, the shippers finished tying down the Dance Dance Revolution machine and the truck starts away. It isn't even out of sight when a delivery van passes it in the southbound lane, groaning under the weight of something heavy. I'm not ashamed to admit that I run after the departing truck, waving my arms and shouting, "Hey, wait, come back, we've got one more thing." They never even slow down. Oh well, there wasn't that much room in the truck left anyway. I sink back to the Welcome Center just in time to hear the driver call to Magnus and Ivory. "Which one of you two ordered the hovercraft?" Obviously, they refuse delivery, and the van departs. Magnus regards me in concern. "You don't look well. You're panting and sweating. Your face is red. You ate some meat, didn't you?" I'm too flabbergasted to reply. Of course my condition has nothing to do with trying to outrun a transport truck in 95-degree heat. It must come from the few mouthfuls of brisket I had. But for some reason, the founder's open, honest expression breaks me down. A little, I confess. It was right there in the cottage. It seemed a shame to waste it. Weakness is nothing to be ashamed of, Magnus assures me. Only shame is. You should meditate on this as soon as possible. Schedule a private session with Ivory. Ivory has a different opinion. I'd be happy to work with Matt, but he's not the problem. He's only here because of Jet, and Jet does not belong. This is a place of wellness, Magnus said firmly, which is something everyone deserves. I agree, his second command counters, which is why Jet Baranov has to go. I have nothing against him personally, but he undermines our entire mission here. He brings in meat, Ivory indicates me, and other people eat it. He makes trouble with the pedal boats, and suddenly the Kerrigan and Buchholz boys are involved. He burglarizes the Welcome Center and recovers his phone when he knows it's forbidden. That only proves how much Jet needs what we offer at the Oasis, Magnus argues. Not when his presence makes it impossible for us to offer it, Ivory insists. There's a harmony here that comes from everyone buying into our methods and our rules. Jet Baranov is a disruptor. He could spoil it for everyone. Disruptor. People use that word to describe Vladimir Baranov when he first started Fuego and revolutionized the tech universe. To hear Jet called that gave me a jolt. Now, just a minute. As mad as I am at the kid, I have to speak up for him. You're talking about a 12-year-old. A 12-year-old who commands hundreds of thousands of dollars of buying power to turn this place upside down practically overnight. Magnus raises both hands. Enough, he says in that soft yet commanding tone of his. The boy stays, of course. I understand the unique challenge he presents, but we'll win him over. He will be whole. You'll see. I can't help thinking this entire place could be a hole when Jet gets through with it, as in a smoking crater. That's what happens when you underestimate a Baranov. I'm still bathed in sweat and limp as a rag when I finally drag myself back to the cottage. When I step inside, I'm surprised to find Jet slumped on the couch, staring off into space. On second inspection, I realize that's not true. He's actually staring at the empty spot on the wall where the TV would be if we had one. I thought all the kids were ziplining today. I tell him. I was going to go, he drawls in reply, but then I made a list of all the things I'd rather do, and this was on it. along with being torn into pieces by a mountain lion and dumpster diving behind a nuclear plant. Only a billionaire's son could compare ziplining to being mauled to death. I couldn't resist commenting. Sorry, the entertainment options aren't up to your expectations. I don't accept your apology. But it isn't all doom and gloom, Luke Skywalker. I go on, your hovercraft arrived today. So help me, he actually looks excited for a moment. Then reality sets in and his face falls. You sent it back? What were you going to do with it? I demand. Fill it with kids and try a prison break? It was only a mini, he says, like it makes it okay. Maximum riders? 2. Anything bigger would not have been practical. Practical? I choke. Could there be anyone alive who understands the meaning of the word less than jet? It's all I can do to hold myself back from going absolutely ballistic at the kid. And it's not because his dad is my boss that I don't do it. Mr. B authorized me to be stricter with Jet. Actually, he ordered me to. In a way, that's the problem. I like Jet. I honestly do. And I know this is a crazy thing to say about the son of one of the richest humans in history, but I feel sorry for him. Sure, he's surrounded by unimaginable wealth, yet on some level, he has to understand that nothing he accomplishes in his life will ever compare to what his father has built. His parents don't have any time for the poor kid. His father's every nanosecond is taken up with fuego, and his mother is always half a world away with orthodontists without borders. If the nannies and au pairs of Silicon Valley had a union hall, Jet's picture would be on the dartboard in the break room. And for good reason. He's gone through dozens of them. It all led up to that fateful holiday party when I got the brilliant idea to catch the boss's eye by befriending his son, who was snatching strands of tinsel from the tree and using them to spell out bad words in the frosting of the cake. And catch his eye I did. The fix I'm in is 100% of my own making. I'm the best coder at fuego, but those skills are a dime a dozen compared with the ability to keep Jet out of trouble. Well, I picture the ruined pedal boat hung up on the wrong side of the river, mostly out of trouble. Anyway, I hope you've learned your lesson, I tell him. Talk about chaos. Magnus wouldn't give me access to my laptop until I explained what was probably going to show up on his doorstep if I didn't cancel all the sales. Do you know what a hassle it is to track down everything you ordered and void it all? He looks at me, eyes lively. How do you know you caught everything? That brings me up short. Are you saying there's another hovercraft coming, or maybe a B-52? Jet just grins, walks into his own room, and sits on his bed, adjusting the blanket so that it hangs on the floor. Looking back on it, I should have remembered. I should have thought to check what was under there. But then things got crazy. How was I supposed to know? Grace Atwater. Berry picking is one of my favorite things to do at the Oasis. The woods around here are like an all-you-can-eat buffet. I love strawberries and raspberries, but wild ones are 10 times more delicious. The wild strawberries at the Oasis are small, and the natural sugar in them is so concentrated that you get an intense flavor explosion that's better than any candy. If we pick a lot, we take our baskets to the kitchen. They make the most amazing pies and shortcakes. Not that I've ever tasted one, Tyrell complains. They've all got gluten in them. We'll talk to Evangeline, I promised him. Sometimes you can make pie crust out of potato flour. Forget it, he says mournfully. If I'm eating potatoes, it had to be French fries. You know Magnus doesn't believe in fried foods. I chide him gently. Everyone should believe in French fries. He insists. Poor Tyrell, but to tell the truth, I'm getting kind of sick of hearing about his allergies. I lost a lot of my sympathy for him back at Jet's cottage when he helped himself to some of that barbecue. Why anybody would eat something with a name like pulled pork is a mystery to me. Anyway, we're making our way through the woods, avoiding the main trails, which are pretty picked over berry-wise. I have to confess that we're eating as much as we're picking, but our baskets are pretty full. Even though he's a sad sack, Tyrell admits that strawberries are delicious. Then, jackpot, we stumble on a stand of bushes that are totally hung with blackberries. We're harvesting like crazy when a ray of sunlight breaks through the trees, and I get a good look at my berry-picking partner. He has so many hives that they've grown together to make his entire face and neck purple. I slap the basket out of his hand. It hits the ground, spilling berries everywhere. You said you're not allergic to berries. I'm not. He puts his hand up. I have strawberries, raspberries. He looks down at his left hand, which still holds a fistful of bumpy blackberries. Uh-oh. So Tyrell has to run to find Laurel, the nurse who serves as our healthfulness pathfinder. That leaves me shambling through the woods, toppling up my basket and carrying his. I've just made it out of the tree when I hear a wild commotion coming from the direction of the bath. A second later, 2 older ladies are dripping bathing suits come running towards me, looking terrified. What's wrong? I ask them. The bath, one of them gibbers. There's a horrible lizard in there.